Hi, I'm delighted to meet you through this video. The topic we are going to currently discuss is internal, external. You can even call it inner and outer. This is one of the pillars in the process of intellectual understanding that Master Shri Bagavath has put forth to overcome our mind related problems or to succeed in our spiritual journey. Um, In fact, this is one of the concepts that help me overcome my own emotional problems, right? So, when we say inner, outer, or internal or external, what we are trying to do is we are trying to classify uh, any situation that we encounter into any of these two categories. So, when we say internal or inner, we are referring to the inner space within us, or in other words, we can even call it mind. All right. So when we are saying mind, that's going to include the thoughts, the emotions, feelings, sensations, anything that we experience internally. All right. Now, thought is something that we've already dealt with in another video. So if you have not yet seen it, please go ahead and have a look at it. That's of immense value. So in this video, we are going to sort of restrict our discussion to emotions, feelings, and sensations, because that is one area where many of us have problems, and how to handle them, how to deal with them, right? So, this is what is covered in the internal or the inner space. So, anything that is outside of us, right, that can be called as external, right? For example, the environment in which we live, let's say our home, our workspace, our office, or the locality where we live, the city, the so on and so forth, right? So when we classify any situation as to whether that situation falls within the inner space or it has something to do with the outer space, that first step itself gives us a lot of clarity. All right. So um, when we are talking of mind or the inner space, uh, we have to take a step back and recollect that we would have heard about this concept that everybody has five sensory organs, namely eyes, with which we see, nose, with which we smell, ears, through which we hear sounds, etc., or speech, etc., skin, by which we feel, the sensation of feeling. When I'm saying feeling, I mean touch, whenever something touches our skin, we are able to sense that touch, isn't it? Right. So that's the fourth one, and fifth one is mind. Um, Mind is what puts up our emotions or our feelings or sensations. And when I'm saying sensation, this is different from the touch sensation. This is more of an internal sensation. Uh, all other organs can be seen, but mind is something that cannot be seen, but it can be felt and experienced. All right. Now, uh, when we are talking of these five sensory organs, these are organs which function on their own, isn't it? Uh, for example, whatever sound happens within our vicinity, we are able to hear it. Um, by concentrating on something, we can probably ignore that sound, but it's not that the sound is not happening, it's just that we have ignored it. But our ears are able to hear that sound, isn't it? Similarly, breathing happens automatically. Probably you can regulate it through some yogic practices or called pranayama, etc., where you can prolong or hold your breath, etc. But the moment you stop that practice, the body automatically goes on to normal breathing. It's not that the breathing stops, isn't it? So the point I'm trying to make is these sensory organs function on an automatic basis. So as an extension, the fifth organ of mind that we are currently taking up for discussion also functions in a similar manner. It functions on an automatic basis. So at any given point of time, there is a flow of emotions or sensations or feelings depending on the situation that we are presently in, or as a reflection of our past memory, memory about our about stuff that happened before, maybe yesterday, 1 week back, 1 year back, so on and so forth. Alternatively, it could be a reflection of something that we anticipate or expect to happen in the future. So depending on any of these reflections, there will be a associated emotion or a feeling or a sensation that goes on inside us, right? um, these emotions or sensations, if you actually go to look at it, they have a lifespan. um, Most of us wouldn't even have realized that an emotion can have a lifespan. Anything in this manifested world has a lifespan. So does that emotion or a sensation. And the lifespan, believe me, is a fraction of a second. It's not even 1 second, it's a fraction of a second. So if we don't interfere with that flow of emotion or sensation, it just passes through in a fraction of a second, in a jiffy, right? It is only us, for principally two reasons, that we try to hold on to that emotion. If it's a pleasant emotion, we want to retain it, right? We want to experience it more and more. If it is something unpleasant, right, then what do? We try to push it away, we try to repel it. By doing so, inadvertently, we are actually giving it more pressure and in an indirect way retaining it. So when this happens, that we get a feeling that the sensation is or that emotion is continuing in us. Let's say anger, or for that matter sadness, or anxiety, depression, any of these, you name it, any of these emotions, if you let it flow, it just disappears like that. But we either fight to retain it or we fight to push it away. Either which ways, it's going to remain with us, right? So just as the other sensory organs like ear, eyes, nose, etc. And oh, I left out the organ relating to taste, right? So just as these function automatically, so does our mind. Moment we understand this, it's just that we need not interfere with it. Everything is going peacefully. If we just step back and not interfere with the process itself, things will get sorted out on their own. Now, having said this, what about the outer space? The outer space is where we have to encounter a situation or an activity has to take place where either some planning has to be done or some sort of physical effort is required. Now, there, do we have any role to play? Of course we have a role to play. We have to put in our efforts to make things happen or to deal with the situation. But when it comes to our inner space, there's no effort required on our part. It's enough if we don't interfere. Now, let us take a couple of examples to sort of understand this concept easier. Let's say you're walking along the road, right? It's sort of evening time, the sun is about to set and it's increasingly becoming darker. You suddenly see a movement in front of you, And when you look at it more carefully, you realize that's a snake that's on the path. Now, what do you think will be your normal sensation? Are you going to feel happy looking at the snake? Unless you're a snake charmer, you're not going to feel happy about looking at a snake, right? So, the instinctive emotion that comes up within us is that of fear. Now, did you plan for fear to come? Did you know that that snake is going to be there? No. Moment the snake, you charged upon the snake, from God knows where, the emotion of fear sprung up inside you. Why did that come? Because only when that emotion comes up, you decide what to do with that situation. Basically, that emotion has come to help you decide to deal with the situation. You can either decide to run away, or if you are of the courageous variety, if you want to sort of, as a defense mechanism, you want to fight the snake, you can do that. Or if you are of the more the conservationist kind of a mindset, you can probably call the wildlife society or whatever, and get them to come and catch the snake and keep it in a zoo, or any other safer place, right? So basically, an action is required to be taken, and this emotion is making you take that action. So all emotions are not wrong, right? Emotions come up to deal with a particular situation. So typically what happens is, there is something that happens in the external space which kindles or brings out an emotion from inside us. So we can decide to take up that emotion and use it as a aid, or as an ammunition to put our efforts and convert that into action in the outer space. On the contrary, if there is no such action that is required to be taken, but an emotion has sprung up, then we can decide to let it flow. So there is a choice for us to pick up an emotion, convert that into action if required, or if there is no action required to be taken, just let it flow. So moment we are able to understand this concept, wherein there is a choice and you are exercising it, that itself happens to be a solution for all our mental problems, trauma, any other psychological issues relating to our mind. Um, let's look at a very interesting anecdote. Uh, it so happens that uh, a slightly young man, is traveling in a train with his two children. Let's say aged between, say, one is aged 3 years old, and the other is probably aged 2 years old. Pretty young kids, right? And these kids are running around in the train compartment, um, playing mischief, in disturbing everybody around. So the other passengers are all getting really irritated with this behavior, and they are wondering why this father is not trying to stop the children. And isn't it the father's duty to take care of the children, not let them create nuisance for others? So, but nobody sort of takes up the initiative to go talk to the father. They're, each one is getting irritated, but they're trying to keep quiet, to see if the situation resolves on its own. Uh, but this mischief is going on for quite some time, and the father is oblivious to what is happening around. Um, then what happens? One person then really decides enough is enough. So he goes to the father and speaks to the father and says, "Sir, can't you see that your children are really troubling everybody around? Why don't you do something about it?" So then the father looks up and replies, um, "Actually, we are on our way to so and so city because my wife, the children's mother, had gone on a tour to that city, and she's a teacher, So she had gone as part of a school tour, and one of the children apparently was going to meet with an accident, and my wife, sort of in trying to help the child, not to meet with the accident, she lost her life. So we are actually going over to that city to, you know, collect our body. Uh, Now I have not told this news to the children because they are what, 3 years old, 2 years old. I don't even know whether they can understand the situation, the gravity of the situation, and honestly, I don't even know how to tell them. You know, so this is the situation in which I am traveling. Moment this gentleman heard that reply, or for that matter, the co-passengers heard this reply, everybody who was earlier irritated, they are feeling totally changed to the opposite. There was so much of compassion, there was so much of understanding. So they did not mind the children, playing havoc within that compartment, train compartment at all. So within a few minutes, their entire mindset changed, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that is how the mind operates. Nothing much changed. If you look at this example, there is nothing much changed. The children were still being mischievous, they were still troubling others, but the co-passengers mindset changed just because they heard a particular incident narrated by that father, and the same people who were irritated earlier, now suddenly they were becoming more acceptable of the children's behavior. So if this is how the mind works, it is easy for us to understand that if we just let it pass through in a flow, then without our interference, they don't get the extension of lifespan. So in a fraction of a second, they pass off and they don't trouble us, right? So in a similar fashion, let us say, let's look at another small story. Um, there's an English professor, who happens to be our uncle, um, very learned gentleman. It so happens that over a period, his mental faculties start giving up, and he starts behaving little crazily, right? So what happens, day by day, he starts calling out people by name, and then say, and keeps telling them that, please come into my room. God is here. I want you to come and have his blessings. This is what is most important in life. Please come. So initially people were just looking at him curiously, and then over a period they realized that this guy has gone crazy. So the moment he starts calling out people's names, nobody wants to be there in that vicinity. They all sort of run away. So his nuisance starts increasing day by day, and what do? We now our own uncle, right? So we don't want to sort of chase him off or something like that. So what do? We lock him up in a room. Okay, so he's in that room, and through the window, if he sees somebody, he shouts out, etc. But by now, the people of that area are aware. So this has been going on for a few days, and it so happens that one day we are reading a newspaper, and it's an English newspaper, and there's a particular word which is, you've not come across that word. So we are trying to figure out what could be the meaning. We are trying to look at the context. It still doesn't make sense to us. Then we suddenly realize, oh, we've got an uncle who's an English professor. So why don't we go and ask him? So without even opening the door, obviously, we call him out and say, Uncle, there is this word. I'm not able to understand the meaning. Can you just help me with the meaning? So, oh, that word. Okay, this is the meaning. He's able to give you an answer. So you come back and then you start reading your paper, right? So the same person, when his proficiency or his skill set was required, we could use his help, solve a situation which we are confronting. But at the same time, the same person When he is being of nuisance or is of trouble to others, we just ignore him. Same way, when it comes to our emotions, if our emotions can be used to solve a particular situation or tackle a problem, etc., in our outer space, we do that. But when there is no such requirement, we just ignore them. They just go off on their own. Right? This is one nice way of understanding this concept. In a similar way, let us say, for example, we live in a multi-storied building, right? So we have an architect friend who visits us, and he says, I would really be interested to go to your terrace and take a look at how the city looks from there. So I said, okay, fine. You want to go to the terrace? Let's go. So we take the elevator, go to the topmost floor, and then go out onto the terrace. And after we reach the terrace, he says, I want to go up further. And we are perplexed. What further? You're out on the terrace, there's nothing more. So, if he's going to keep insisting, the best thing that you can tell him is, okay, if you want to try, you try. Right? So, we all know that's the maximum. You can't do anything more there, isn't it? You've reached the terrace. There's nothing more. You can't go up any further unless you decide to fly. In a normal situation, that doesn't happen. In a similar way, when it comes to our inner space, the moment we realize that there is nothing much we can do, that by trying to regulate, we are only trying to mess up the problem further. By trying to retain something, we are only trying to again mess up the situation. So moment we realize our, how do I put it, our inability or the meaninglessness of the situation, we give up our effort in regulating the inner space. When we do that, then everything starts flowing as a free flow. So this is another way of understanding the same concept. Let us look at one more short story or an anecdote, if I can put it that way. We're sitting in our living room and happily reading a novel, let's say, right? Suddenly a madman enters our house. We were not prepared for the door was open and he entered. And the moment he enters, obviously there's a reaction within us. There is an emotion which is springing up. If that emotion was that of anger, what do? Using that emotion, you try to tackle that fellow and chase him away. Right? Suppose if the emotion that came up was fear, what do? You get out of the house, try to call your neighbors and take their help and sort of chase this guy away. If any of these two emotions did not come, or when they came you were trying to ignore it, then the madman is going to come in. He's going to create a lot of trouble in the house. It might even lead to a situation where he might chase you out. Right? So emotions are required to the extent that they help in regulating an external situation, or to the extent that they aid in solving a problem externally. When it comes to the inner space, there's nothing to do. Practically or even theoretically, there is nothing to do. The moment we give up our effort as far as our inner space is concerned, everything starts flowing in a free flow. Right? Now, this seems to answer most of our psychological or mind-related problems. In the beginning, you would wonder that I mentioned about success in the spiritual journey. Now, how does this help that? No, it's something that we are most likely to wonder about, isn't it? So, the beauty about this concept is, when we let these emotions flow, what happens is they cease to have any control over us. When that control drops, then there is no fight or there is no block in our spiritual journey, and the mind starts functioning on its own. If you ask anybody who has done some amount of sadhana, if I can put it that way, or done some amount of work on the spiritual path, it will invariably come around to tackling the mind. Because in my own case also, I was struggling with how do I subdue my mind. That's the word. How do I subdue my mind? In trying to subdue my mind, I was actually fighting with it, and needless to say, I never succeeded. But the moment I dropped it and I said, okay, as far as my mind is concerned, there's nothing that I need to do. If an emotion is going to come, I'm going to think, am I going to need this emotion to tackle something externally? Yes, I will use it, finish the problem. If there is no such requirement, I'm going to ignore it. When this happened, what I experienced was mind was no longer an enemy for me. Just like my ear, nose, tongue, eyes, etc., skin, etc., it was on a auto functioning or an autopilot mode. So when this started happening, what I realized was my entire effort as far as the spiritual journey is concerned was becoming smoother and smoother, and I reached a point where probably this is what one will call freedom, or a better word, liberation, realization, enlightenment, various words, but addressing that same experience that I got. Should I even call it experience? It was a state that happened to me. I didn't bring it on. It just happened to me. And did I put in effort to make it happen? No. All I did was I realized, and mind you, it was not even something that I physically dropped something. I just realized that there was nothing more required to be done as far as my internal or inner space is concerned. When I stopped interfering with my mind, everything started flowing, and automatically the transformation happened. So then I realized that this was the place, or the state that I was trying to reach or achieve, but not succeeding earlier. And now I did not even try. Just because I understood, it happened. Right. So this is how I'm saying this concept helps us even in our spiritual quest. Right. So for both sides of the coin, as in the psychological or the mind related issues, and on the other side the spiritual quest or the spiritual search, both of these are addressed just by understanding this one concept of inner outer, internal external. Right. In fact, I would say this is one of the pillars of understanding, or the method that the Master Sri Bhagavat has put forth. A radical yet simple but definitely profound way of tackling these two issues that mankind has been grappling with for centuries. Right. So I hope you've all benefited through this video. Please put this into practice. You've heard it, so start applying it in your life. You will see a tremendous change happening. A transformation will happen, and you will experience what I experienced or what I'm continuing to experience. Thanks for the opportunity.